Once upon a time, in the magical land of Equestria, there were two legal sisters who ruled together and created harmony for all the land. To do this, the eldest used her unicorn powers to raise the sun at dawn. The younger brought out the moon to begin the night. Thus, the two sisters maintained balance for their kingdom and their subjects, all the different types of ponies. But as time went on, the younger sister became resentful. The ponies relished and played in the day her elder sister brought forth, but shunned and slept through her beautiful...
Okay, first of all, we all know this is bullcrap nowadays, right? Jokes aside, welcome back to Mjax. Well, actually, this is a new series. We're going to be doing a retrospective. We're going to be going back to the old episodes during the hiatus of... I think we're on Season 8 right now, which is... oh my god, it's mind-boggling, to say the least. So, I did write a few notes, but I'm not going to rely solely on the notes for this. However, I am going to make some notes. Because, well, they wouldn't be very much different or very much retrospectives if I didn't. If you don't like the sort of off-the-cuff explanation that I do, well, I have a blog where I talk about stuff, but I find my creative juices flow better if I just go off the cuff like I am. Anyway, we began this series in 2010, which was a pretty magical year. Not just because I got to go to Disney World due to my mental disabilities and some luck of the draw in some contest for a mentally disabled kid. No, it gave us My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. But you might be asking yourself the question, how well does it really hold up looking back? I'd say pretty well. It's pretty much exactly what you thought it was back then, but hasn't improved magically over the years. Haven't remastered it or anything. So you're going to have to deal with the fact that stuff is different. For example, all the colors are really washed out in the pilot episodes. And I think for the first two seasons. It's weird, but they eventually changed it very subtly, and like nobody seemed to be pointing it out. At least in 2011, which is when I joined around. Anyway, let's get on with it. Now, I didn't notice it on previous views, but the yin-yang symbol is clearly hidden in the book's opening when the princesses cycle around each other at 30 seconds in. Which, honestly, I couldn't tell you if that was intentional or not. Now, I did call it bullshit a few seconds ago when I talked about the old legend they're telling here. And that's because it would later come out that most people didn't really believe the idea that Luna only became resentful because Pony slept through her night. And that kind of idea was later manifested in many interpretations, including the canon comics that blamed an evil power called the Nightmare, which seemed to, theoretically, if you believe in the theory, appear in the Equestria Girls things, and it also may have been hinted at with the Tantibus. However, it's never been outright said in anything to my knowledge.
One fateful day, the younger unicorn refused to lower the moon to make way for the dawn. The elder sister tried to reason with her, but the bitterness in the young one's heart had transformed her into a wicked mare of darkness, Nightmare Moon. She vowed that she would shroud the land in eternal night. Reluctantly, the elder sister harnessed the most powerful magic known to Ponyville, elements of harmony.
It's really weird how this pilot kind of kept a lot of the stuff that was later changed, like even as early as season 1, such as referring to the sisters as unicorns rather than alicorns, which they wouldn't be officially referred to as alicorns until season 3, because it was actually a fan term for them. They didn't really call them anything before that. The elements of MacGuffin here became more prominently important again and again until about season 4, when they were promptly put to rest and therefore forgotten. as they were returned to their origin point, which we never got really an understanding of where they came from until season 4. They just kind of were. They were just something you kind of accepted, which for a children's cartoon makes tons of sense.
Using the magic of the elements of harmony, she defeated her younger sister and banished her permanently in the moon.
It's later shown the battle between them is actually shown, and she in fact does not defeat her sister using the elements of harmony, but rather uses it as a last-ditch effort to do something. But because one of them cannot use all of the elements of harmony properly, it's theorized that this is why she was banished in the moon.
The elder sister took on responsibility for both sun and moon, and harmony has been maintained in Equestria for generations since. Elements of harmony. I know I've heard of those before. But where?
In that book that you just read. While we're at it, are you not going to question the fact that that book pretty much just mentions Celestia? Your teacher?
My Little Pony.
My Little Pony. Isn't this intro lovely? So, the first intro was changed a lot, and I mean a lot. You might be used to the sort of changing one season now thing that they do now. Well, back in the old days, and by the old days I mean 2010, holy crap, I feel old, this thing changed every other freaking season, and not like every other season, like once per season. Sometimes it would change twice in a season. For example, in this first episode, you can clearly see Big Mac, but he's replaced by Caramel, but it's a recolor of Big Mac. It doesn't really make sense. Anyway, this is pretty nostalgic, to say the least, but it's also really girly. I'd also like to point out that there was detail, like Rarity's reflection in the mirror, as early as this first pilot episode, but the style of the show has changed subtly over time. And now that I'm looking at it, there's actually an animation error in the intro, which is pretty funny. During the scene with all 6 of the main 6, if you look to the left near the buildings, there's a texture that gets cut off. Anyway, they were using Flash, I believe, to animate this entire thing, so a lot of the backgrounds kind of look flat. They later migrated to using a different program, I believe, or an upgraded version of Flash, and stuff got progressively more detailed as the show goes on. So it's kind of jarring to see just how simplistic the backgrounds and stuff were in these early seasons. Friends! Developed for television by Lauren Faust, your Lord and Savior. Or Lady and Savior, I suppose.
There you are, Twilight. Moon Dancer is having a little get-together in the West Castle courtyard. You wanna come? Sorry, girls. I got a lot of studying to catch up on. Does that pony do anything except study? I think she's more interested in books than friends. I know I've heard of the elements of harmony.
So, pausing in here again, folks. Sorry about that, but I did say these were going to be a little bit different. This early intro gives us a really good look at Book Horse, who I'd like to go more detail in with future series where I talk about the ponies themselves. No promises that that'll come out this year, but what's notable now is that she's mean and a bit rude. Also, she lives in a literal ivory tower. You can Google that if you're confused or want to know more, but the significance of this joke and its subtlety is that the idiom known as the ivory tower of academia stipulates one who's cut off from the sensibilities and facts of the real world due to seclusion in interest of academic pursuits, which pretty much to a T describes Twilight, which is why I really appreciate the very subtle reference there. Lemonheart's Twinkle-Shine and Moondancer, who the latter of which is only mentioned, would later reappear a whole whopping 5 seasons later, thanks to the work of Mr. Larson, who I'm sure you all know, and who I'm assured of is a pretty cool dude. But right now, they really only serve to show that Twilight is preoccupied in her own little world, something that I think is very telling of her character, and it gives children and adults equally, that's the word I'm looking for, characterization that our main character definitely needs without kind of throwing it in your face, kind of show don't tell. Like some children's show, instead of telling you that Twilight is secluded and she likes to sit there, like directly saying it to your face, they're showing it by having other characters comment towards the idea and having her seem that way. This is also the first appearance of Minette or Colgate and Lyra Heartstrings, as well as Amethyst Star. But these ponies wouldn't actually, besides Colgate, wouldn't actually get their fan names until a little later, I believe. So, right about here, we get our first dose of Spike abuse. It happens a lot even in the later seasons of the show, and this is also the second time we hear about Moondancer. You'd think that she would have been a significant character in these early seasons, but she isn't. She never actually appears at all. Instead, we get our introduction to a character who is kind of important, but also not important. Spike. Another character I really want to go in depth with in a later series if I ever do that, because he really gets the shaft, and also a lot of people tend to hate him for some reason, and I don't really understand why. Twilight notably doesn't only use her magic to lift things in this scene. She also uses her other appendages, which is a thing that was lost later when she became more magically adept. I think that shows character growth without, like, shoving it in your face, but it may also just be laziness on the writer's part, I don't know. We also don't see the series staple magical color aura on the effects on the objects that usually you do see later in the series, only on her horn, and it's whitish rather than pink, as it will be later in the series. The reason for this, in case you didn't catch this little detail, is that later in the series, the magical aura effect either reflects the main color of the pony's cutie mark or their eye color. This is why Sweetie Belle, for instance, has green magic when she actually appears. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It seemed to me when I first watched this episode that Twilight literally didn't really give a damn about Spike, outside of his insistent nature, which led to some confusion on my part as to why so many people back then seemed to hate him rather than Twilight. I mean, I suppose it's because ponies are cuter, but hey, I binge-watched the first 2 seasons of this show on YouTube when Hasbro wasn't, cracking down on pirated episodes. I watched the first 2 seasons in like about a week, so how should I know?
Elements of harmony. See Mare in the Moon? Mare in the Moon? But that's just an old pony's tale.
I initially found it weird that Spike refers to the Mare and the Moon as an old pony's tail, and I figured, why wouldn't he say old mare's tail? I figured, wouldn't that have been a better pun, because mare, maid, or the other one, old wives' tale. Again, you could have just said mare, but considering how young Spike is at this point in the series, and that he's a dragon, it almost makes sense that he'd refer to a legend from ponies as a pony's tale, as it's not from his origins, and it's not a dragon's tale. I don't think this was intentional, but it's a nice little headcanon.
Aha! The Mare and the Moon. If from olden times, a powerful pony wanted to rule Equestria.
It's later disproven, but apparently Ponish is made of emoji, as we can see in this scene. Anyway, we first hear of the Nightmare Moon legend in detail here. It's a reference to the Man in the Moon, as you may have surmised. More Spike abuse. And we also get a sight of Spike's not so much lack of intelligence, but rather skeptical nature. Something with Twilight I'm sure he pretty much had to develop, since she's pretty straight and narrow when it comes to most things in her earlier depictions, and later, as she gets more comfortable, is a little bit of a, I don't want to say arsehole, but she's kind of an arsehole. The fact that Twilight believes this prophecy based on 2 books kind of felt weird to me, even when I was watching it, but I went along with it because it was a kid's show. But looking back on the show proper, she doesn't believe other things quite as easily. Like, she doesn't believe Zecora is evil, and she doesn't believe in zombies. She doesn't believe in curses or hexes, even though they are proven later to actually exist in the series. Twilight is weirdly just, I guess, gullible for the sake of the plot.
Take a note, please.
Here we get to see Spike's primary role in the series moving forward, the friendship lesson / princess phone.
Studies of pony magic have led me to discover that we are on the precipice of disaster. Hold on. Where's it? Threshold.
You don't know how to spell threshold?
Brink?
He doesn't know how to spell brink?
That something really bad is about to happen.
You know, with a letter written like that, I have no idea why the princess totally didn't believe you.
And bring with her eternal night. Something.
So there's a little bit of foreshadowing in the scene, actually, which I don't notice. Well, I don't notice. I didn't notice the first time watching through, and a few of my friends didn't notice either, but you can actually see Nightmare Moon's design as early as this episode in the reflection of the hourglass, where it replaces the horse's head, which I think is pretty nice. A little bit of a visual gag.
Must be done to make sure this terrible prophecy does not come true. I await your quick response. Your faithful student, Twilight Sparkle. Twilight Sparkle. Good. Great. Said it. Now, of course. I don't know. Princess Celestia's a little busy getting ready for the summer sun celebration. And it's like the day after tomorrow. That's just it, Spike. The day after tomorrow is the 1000th year of the summer sun celebration. It's imperative that the princess is told right away.
So, here we're not so subtly informed that Twilight Sparkle is the protege of Princess Celestia, who is the ruler of Equestria, and we bring up the question, why the hell is a princess ruling a kingdom? But then we think of the Mario Bros. And we ask the same question. Why is Bowser a king if, well, the princess is a princess? I went to learn about hierarchies and how they work, and came to the conclusion that the reason she wouldn't be a queen, Celestia that is, the only reason for it would be if the current queen was either still alive, or she was not the heir to the throne proper and was actually one of a couple or few siblings. However, since she is the eldest sister of a pair of two, this doesn't really make sense. The reasoning for this, of course, comes down to actually Hasbro, who pretty much demanded that Disney-style Queen Celestia be changed to Princess Celestia. Which also inspired the inclusion of Princess Luna as being a princess rather than just a generic villain. I thought that was pretty interesting. Anyway, equestrian politics get a lot more confusing from here on out, so if you're new to the series and you're watching this retrospective for some reason, buckle up, kiddo. Buckle up. Oh, yeah, and nice showing and not telling that she's the princess's protege.
She's been my mentor. She's never once doubted me.
Spike seems to know something we don't hear. Or maybe he's just rightfully confused as to why the hell Princess... I keep wanting to say Princess because that's what she is now. Ugh. Why Twilight is so believing of this prophecy and how she thinks the Princess Celestia is going to believe her. But why am I pointing out the obvious to you?
I knew she would want to take immediate action. My dearest, most faithful student, Twilight, you know that I value your diligence and that I trust you completely. But you simply must stop reading those dusty old books. My dear Twilight, there is more to a young pony's life than studying. So I'm sending you to supervise the preparations for the Summer Sun celebration in this year's location, Ponyville. And I have an even more essential task for you to complete. Make some friends. Look on the bright side, Twilight. The princess arranged for me to stay in a library. Doesn't that make you happy? Yes. Yes, it does. You know why? Because I'm right. I'll check on the preparations as fast as I can, then get to the library to find some proof of Nightmare Moon's return. Then, when will you make friends? The princess said. She said to check on preparations. I am her student, and I'll do my royal duty, but the fate of Equestria does not rest on me making friends.
The irony of that one statement becomes even more hilarious once Starlight Glimmer enters the picture, but we'll get to that someday. I'd like to point out the interestingness of Twilight's reluctance to make friends here. I mean, I get she's introverted, but she seems to believe that the princess knows best. So why would she go against the princess's orders? More importantly, why would Celestia tell her that she's wrong if Celestia was indeed the sister of Luna? Why would she act like nothing's wrong? And what's kind of sad, well, sad, I don't know if sad's the right thing, what's kind of disappointing is that we don't actually get an answer to that question. We only have headcanons and theories. The one I agree with most, which isn't a joke theory, is that Celestia knew that in order for them to unlock the elements of harmony, Twilight would need to make genuine friends. She wouldn't be able to just force friendships. And knowing Twilight as her student, Twilight wouldn't know exactly how to make friends properly. She would probably force it in a way that is, how do I put this, awkward. Which isn't to say the ponies of this town, which we're about to meet, aren't awkward all in and of themselves, but I find it kind of interesting that she believes that, at least in theory, she believed that the proper ponies would be met by Twilight, and that they would become friends, and that they would be able to unlock the elements of harmony, so they would be able to save Princess Luna from being Nightmare Moon. Another theory that was often thrown around is that Celestia is just a troll, and she just kind of pretended not to know in order to mess with Twilight, which I think is the more cynical route of the two ideas. But since the show never actually has Celestia apologize for throwing Twilight on a wild goose chase, or explaining this to Twilight, or even, for that matter, Twilight never asks about why why the princess didn't believe her. I think it was kind of, maybe it was limitations, maybe it was just because it was a children's show and they didn't think it mattered, but I don't know. I find it a bit disappointing that never actually happens. But rest assured, the Princess Celestia knows exactly what she's doing. Horse noises coming out of ponies. One of the first times, and only times for a while.
Thank you, sirs. Maybe the ponies of Ponyville have interesting things to talk about. Come on, Twilight, just try. Hello?
So there's Pinkie Pie. We have no idea if Pinkie Pie is an important character or not because of the fact that, well, it's pretty much the same interaction she's had with any other ponies, except for the fact that this one's acting a little bit weird.
Well, that was interesting, all right. Summer Sun Celebration Official Overseer's Checklist. Number 1, banquet preparations. Sweet Apple Acres.
I noticed Spike's voice actually changed over the years. Became a little bit deeper, a little bit more mature. Wonder if that was intentional. Classic Applejack pose.
Good afternoon. My name is Twilight Sparkle. Well, how to do, Miss Twilight? A pleasure making your acquaintance.
Applejack will not sound like this for the rest of the season and onwards of the rest of the series. It very clearly shows to me that the voice actors are just starting to get into their characters. They're not really comfortable in the voices or the performances they're giving. Except for Twilight, who's acting exactly like Tara Strong would when using her smarmy girl voice, which she also uses for a number of other characters.
I'm Applejack. We here at Sweet Apple Acres sure do like making new friends. Friends? Actually, I am. So, what can I do for you? Well, I am in fact here to supervise preparations for the Summer Sun celebration. And you're in charge of the food?
Well, nice little detail I don't think I've ever noticed, and I'm just kind of noticing now, and I don't think they even do it in later seasons, and if they do, I haven't noticed it much, is that Twilight's hair, in fact, both of these ponies' manes and tails, are animated as they're moving their neck and head. They didn't have to do that, but they did. And I think, subconsciously, that might have been something that drew me to this show, was that there's just attention to detail everywhere, despite it really not needing it.
We sure as sugar are. Would you care to sample some? Oh, as long as it doesn't take too long. Soup zone, every pony!
So, in this scene, we actually get only 2 different types of ponies doing the Rainbow Dash running animation followed by a bunch of smoke, but you wouldn't really actually notice. So it's pretty inconsequential to the regular viewer.
Now, why don't I introduce...
However, it does serve as, well, I don't want to go to film school. We've all been to film class before, but it serves as a wipe transition into the next scene.
Y'all could be apple friends. Thanks, but I really need to hurry. This here's apple fritter. Apple
They make it seem like this is a lot of apples, but this isn't even half of the apple family we later get to know. I do appreciate the little visual gag they have, however, which is how they show Apple Fritter having an apple fritter at first. So at first you think she's naming the foods, but in reality she's naming the ponies.
Up and at 'em, Granny Smith. We got guests.
Interestingly, Granny Smith seems yellow in this version because of the desaturation I mentioned earlier.
They're already part of the family. Okay, well, I can see the food situation is handled, so we'll be on our way. Aren't you gonna stay for front?
And then there's Apple Bloom, and she's just adorable.
Sorry, but we have an awful lot to do. Aww.
That face heel turn.
Fruits all taken care of. Next is weather. I ate too much pie. There's supposed to be a Pegasus pony named Rainbow Dash clearing the clouds. Well, she's not doing a very good job, is she?
So, now we move on to Rainbow Dash. Somebody I actually have something to talk about. Rainbow Dash, early on, was considered two things. Male, yes, for reals, I'll get to that, but also a lesbian, because of the rainbow hair. Nowadays, making that kind of assumption would probably get you lynched, but back then it was kind of assumed that that's what the thing was, and people that didn't really know the show thought Rainbow Dash was actually a dude based on her more masculine voice, which matches her more masculine personality. That said, Rainbow Dash is a girl, and identifies as a girl, and that's not me putting my beliefs on it or anything. Don't attack me, please. I am a supporter of the LGBTQ community, and I am part of it. But whatever. Moving on, here's Rainbow Dash's interaction, and what Rainbow Dash considers making a friend. In this case, I'm actually with Twilight on this. So Rainbow Dash smacks into Twilight, scraping her across pavement and getting her covered in mud, then laughs at her.
Let me help you.
We get our first scene of Pegasus ponies manipulating the weather, which is some nice world building.
Oops, I guess I overdid it. How about this? My very own patented rain blow dry.
More puns.
No, don't thank me. You're quite welcome.
I mean, that's the least you could have done. Also, you made her hair a mess. So, she bursts out laughing again.
Let me guess. You're Rainbow Dash. Me, one and only. What? You heard of me? I heard you're supposed to be keeping the sky clear. I'm Twilight Sparkle, and the princess sent me to check on the weather. Yeah, that'll be a snap. I'll do it in a jiffy, just as soon as I'm done practicing. Practicing for what? The wonderful. They're gonna perform at the celebration tomorrow, and I'm gonna show them my stuff. The Wonderbolts. Yup. The most talented flyers in all of Equestria. That's them.
So here we go. We get a little bit of background on our first pony. We didn't get a lot with Applejack besides that she's a family pony, but with Rainbow Dash, we're getting to see her goals and aspirations, as well as her attitude and the kind of person, or pony in this case, she is. It's really cleverly done, and I think it's well deserving of the praise it's gotten over the years.
Please. They'd never accept a Pegasus who can't even keep the sky clear for one measly day. Hey, I could clear the sky in 10 seconds
So, that... that's one of the many things Rainbow Dash said that became a meme. And before even watching the show, I was exposed to all the memes. So, hearing that line out of context and then seeing it in context, it kind of lost its power for a while. Until I went back in later days and realized that when she says she can do it in 10 seconds flat, if you actually watch the runtime, she does in fact do it in only 10 seconds of animation. A neat but unnecessary attention to detail once again. So, Rainbow just assumes they're friends after she skidded someone against the pavement, threw them in mud, rained water on them to try and help them, got them way too soaked, then ruined their entire hair, all the while laughing at them, and then she assumes that they're going to be friends. Ponies in this town are weird. And not only weird, they're also kind of just badly written. Later, they would kind of remedy this, but at the same time, it's kind of a problem that permeates the whole show, where ponies are nice way too often than not, and other times they're way too mean, and it's whiplash. So at first it seems kind of weird that Spike would be attracted, or at least think of a pony as beautiful, but then you kind of realize that he's only grown up with ponies, though you only find that out again in later episodes. So it kind of makes sense that his perception of what attractive is would be based on his nurture rather than his nature, which is something that reflects real life. Is that the intention? Probably not. The point is just to point out that Rarity is in fact beautiful in the eyes of most people. She is the most, I would say, girly of the ponies. And therefore, I think you all get what I'm trying to say, so I'm just going to keep going.
Oh, no.
Oh, fuck no.
No. How are my spines? Are they straight?
How would they ever not be straight? Aren't they spines?
Please, I'm in the zone.
Is it twir? I love that.
Sparkle always does the trick, does it not? Why, Garrett, you are a talent. Now, how can I help you? Oh my God, done! Whatever happened to Coiffure? Oh.
Something I really liked about this show, which didn't ever really go away, but got less used, was it uses a lot of old slang. A lot of words people don't use on a daily basis anymore. Like fabulous, darling, cool, awesome, radical. And a little bit of French, like ensemble and coiffure. I always thought it was nice.
Oh, you mean my name? Well, it's a long story. I'm just here to check on the decorations and then I'll be out of your hair. My hair? What about your hair? Wait, where are we going? Help!
So somehow, by going to the left into the backstage of the city hall, they managed to make it to Rarity's clothes shop / house. Which, I beg the question, was there a back door? Or was that just lazy animation? Up to you to judge. There's some weird tents, by the way, in this part of Ponyville, which are there, but we never actually see them in depth in any episode, so they kind of just exist nonsensically, as well as the trees are shaded a lot more detailed than anywhere else in the show for this moment. And it's never really known why. I think the background artists were just having fun with it. I really love the swirliness of the clouds, how they look almost stylized in their appearance. But I'm not going to waste your time and explain to you every little detail of every little scene, especially since I'm not using video, which I'm sure is something that people kind of dislike about my series. But if I could, without getting copyright struck, I would. So, the first thing we got is Twilight in the Manhattan Liberty statue, or the real-life equivalent of Lady Liberty, followed by 2 yellow, which she later makes a dress for Twilight that is completely yellow and much uglier, so I don't know why she says it's ugly. She also does a few new hairstyles that are blink and you miss it. Interesting that she uses the word envious. And I'm nitpicking here, but the word envy, to me at least, refers to the feeling of wanting something that someone else has, but not wanting them to have it. Whereas jealousy is the want for something that someone else has. Period. I don't think it's really that big of a deal, and I'm sure some English scholar out there could correct me if I'm wrong, but that's always how I'd seen it, so I always felt it was kind of off-putting of Rarity to use that word, even though I knew she was just saying it because it was a fancy-sounding word.
Wait to hear all about it. We're gonna be the best of friends, you and I.
Twilight's right to feel weird here, because why in the world would anyone become friends with someone they just met over that person's aspirations for wanting what they don't have and that you do have? That almost seems like you're using the person. Like you don't have anything that's actually in common.
Emerald? What was I thinking? Let me get you some rubies! Quick, before she decides to dye my coat a new color. Wasn't she wonderful? Focus, Casanova. What's next on the...
Interesting that they reference Casanova here. I'm not even sure most parents would get that, let alone 6-year-olds.
Music! It's the last one!
It's weird that that's the last one. You'd think a celebration would be, you know, kind of essential to the one character in the show we haven't met, who kind of is the party celebration person, but I'm not going to get hamstrung on it. So of course the Blue Jay is the one that's being an asshole. So Best Pony is here.
Hello! Oh my, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to frighten your birds.
Then why did you say hello extra loud?
I'm just here to check up on the music and it's beautiful. I'm Twilight Sparkle. What's your name? I'm sorry, what was that? Didn't quite catch that.
Cute whimpers.
Well, it looks like your birds are back.
Also, Spike is surprisingly missing from this scene for no apparent reason other than what's about to happen.
So I guess everything's in order. Keep up the good work. Okay. That was easy. A baby dragon! Oh, I've never seen a baby dragon before. So cute. Well. Oh my, he talks. I didn't know dragons could talk. That's just so incredibly wonderful.
She didn't know dragons could talk? Huh. Notable, lore-wise, but otherwise not interesting.
I just don't even know what to say. Well, in that case, we better be going. Oh, wait. What's his name? I'm Spike. Hi, Spike. I'm Fluttershy. Wow, a talking dragon. And what do dragons talk about? What do you want to know? Absolutely everything. Well, I started out as a cute little purple and green egg.
In a purple and green egg, yet later the egg is actually all purple. Continuity fail.
And that's the story of my whole entire life. Well, up until today.
If he actually told her the entire story up until today, I would like to hear it. Because I've had lots of headcanons and fan fictions that told me all about Spike, but not a lot that's really been confirmed, unfortunately. Now, I think this scene might be why some people started to hate on Spike, due to his sort of childish nature, how he's kind of just full of himself, but at the same time, kind of give the guy a pass, because he's getting treated like shit, so whenever someone treats him well, of course he's gonna soak it in.
You want to hear about today? Oh, yes, please. I am so sorry. How did we get here so fast? This is where I'm staying while in Ponyville, and my poor baby dragon needs his Nordor. Aw, look at that. He's so sleepy he can't even keep his little balance. Poor thing. You simply must get him to bed. Yes. We'll get right on that. Well, good night.
So Fluttershy gets the door slammed in her face because she's a doormat, and that's what happens to doormats, but she's going to enter the building in a few seconds anyway.
Sorry, Spike, but I have to convince the princess that Nightmare Moon is coming and we're running out of time. We just need to be alone so I can study without a bunch of crazy ponies trying to make friends all the time. Now, where's the light?
Oh, and there's Derpy in the background. Also, two Lyras, somehow. Reusing background ponies was a pretty popular technique. They only had a few designs, and they pretty much layered them in any way they could to make it look like there was different ponies. Over time, they got a bigger selection, but to start out with, they only had a few, really. Anyway, here's Pinkie Pie.
Hi, I'm Pinkie Pie, and I threw this party just for you. Were you surprised? Were you? Very surprised. Libraries are supposed to be quiet. That's silly. What kind of welcome party would this be if it were quiet? I mean, duh. Boring. You see, I saw you when you first got here, remember? You were all hello, and I was all, remember? You see, I never saw you before, and I never saw you before. That meant you're new, because I know every pony, and I'm every pony in Ponyville. And if you're new, it meant
So here's Pinkie Pie, a hit-or-miss character for many people. You either love her, or you hate her. I was pretty mixed when I first met her. I never thought she was too annoying, but she was kind of overbearing. I later grew an appreciation for her character and who she was when I started to notice things about her that reflected my own self. Unfortunately, those things never really panned out, and she became less and less of an interesting character and more of a token funny character as the seasons went on, which is kind of depressing, but she still has a little bit of charm, I think. Talk more about it when I do my thing on the ponies in general and how far I think they've come. Don't expect that to come anytime soon. Now, I hate to split this into parts, but I'm gonna have to because this video is getting long as it is. So I hope you guys aren't too disappointed, but don't worry, the episodes will be uploaded alongside each other, so you should just have to click onto the next video and it'll be fine. Anyway, I'll see you guys there. Bye-bye.